Good day everybody, my name is Daniel, and in today's lesson we're going to be going through inheritance. So inheritance is just one of the programming paradigms in object-oriented programming where we inherit something from something. Basically it's a class and we inherit all the properties of one class into the other. So I'm just going to explain it by drawing for you, and then after that we're going to get straight into the code. Me drawing for you, don't skip this because this is me, this is basically how you actually conceptualize the concept. Okay, so say we have a class, right? So inheritance is just part of classes. Remember, we're still on classes. So if you have a class of, say, a person, right, and this is your class, right, just like you would declare any class in C++ or any programming language, and you have obviously public and private member types, but it's just for sake of simplicity, say you have name, right? You have name, and this stores the name of the person. Now say you also wanted to have another class for some other reason. You're programming, this program stores data of people, but maybe you're building a school system or something like that, or a hospital or whatever. But say you're building a school system, right, a school application, and you have, say, a student. Now if you have a student, what are you going to have inside of student? You are also going to have some things like, say, name of the student, and you're also going to have maybe their student ID, right? Maybe the student number. Let's just say this is student ID. Okay, so if you have a student that has name and other properties like name, surname, date of birth, ID number, all that, but then you also have a person which also has exactly those properties, then why don't you just make student a person? Student is basically a person. They share the same properties. So that's where inheritance comes in programming. So really what you want to do is that you want to take the student and just make it inherit the properties of the person. So instead of just redefining name, surname, date of birth, everything that's already been defined over here, you don't have to define all of those things anymore. The only thing that you need to define after creating this class is just whatever else that's needed, whatever else that's unique. So in student, the only thing that's unique is the student ID. So the point of inheritance is that it saves you a lot of time, and it also structures your program and structures your classes. Instead of creating separate classes, you're basically creating one big class, and you're creating other small classes that basically inherit, hence the term inheritance, that inherit the properties of the base class. So this is going to be the base class. This is what we call the base class, and this is called the inherited class. So as you can imagine, you can do a whole lot of things. You can now keep inheriting. For instance, now we can have another class, say lecturer, for instance, and then lecturer also inherits from the base class. This is actually called the derived class. So these are derived classes. This is also a derived class, and this is called the base class. So, and then still you can have the same thing. Maybe the lecturer, maybe you want to have, obviously you have the name, etc., but you don't define this because it's already defined in the base class. But in the derived class, really, maybe for the lecturer, you say, maybe just for example sakes, maybe we want to have the department that they work in. Okay, sorry for my bad handwriting. I'm using a stylus. I'm not used to it, but yeah, so this is basically inheritance, right? Now we're gonna code this actual example so that you guys know how it works, not just in theory but in practice. Okay, so let's get into it. So okay, so never mind everything that you see here. Actually, this can get confusing. Let me just do this. Just create a new project, file, new project, C++ application, and let's get started. All right, so I'm just gonna go over to my IDE over here. Just remember to create a new project, file, new project, and create that project. Okay, so let's get started. So let's see. All right, so obviously we have the include IOString, include string as a type, and then also write this or copy this base class over here. So it's very simple. It's just class of a person. You have public access modifier. You also have a private access modifier, and you have all of this here, right? You have your constructor, which is going to use this simple constructor that only takes the name and the last name, first name and the last name. We're not going to be going through or having a constructor that takes no parameters. And then we just have a display information function over here. So how do we use this class? Let's just instantiate that real quick. We'll just say person, and then we'll say person one. Can't type today. So we'll have it say Daniel and also Jumpman. Okay, so Daniel Jumpman is the first name and the last name. So let's actually write the implementation of this class, like the constructor and the function display info. Okay, all the way down here. Let's do that. So we'll say person colon person. This is for the constructor. And what does it take? It takes in the string f name and last name. I'm gonna paste that here, and then we're gonna just initialize the variables. First name is equals to f name, and last name is equals to l name. Simple. And then the that's the constructor, and then the display info, similar. We'll say person colon the function name, takes no parameters. Let's just write a cout statement. We'll say cout first name, and then first name, and then space, and last name, end line. All right, so that's person display info. We forgot the void type over here. It's not a type, but yes, we forgot to add void. And then now I think everything should be okay. So let's or we've already instantiated the object. Let's run this. And okay, nothing runs. I mean, it does run, but we don't get the actual output because we didn't expect the compiler to give us an output. So I'm going to say person1.display info, and let's run this to see if it works. There we go. First name Daniel, last name Jumpman. It's very simple. Okay, so let's now have now let's actually now create the actual derived class, because so far we've just created the base class. Okay, this is very simple. You should be able to do this in your sleep at this point. I'm just kidding. So now it's time for the derived class. Okay, this is where inheritance comes in. So the derived class, were very simple. How you declare it is you're going to say class student. This is the name of the class. It can be anything that you want it to be. And then here's the moment of truth. We say colon, and then public, and then person. Right, that's basically it. So everything else kind of remains the same. Public, and then private. So the difference between the student and the person is that the student will just have one private member variable, which would be the student ID, right? Which is an integer. And then in the public, we need to create the constructor, which is student, and it takes in which parameters. Similarly to the person, it takes in the string, fname, string, lname, and then we also wanted to take in the student ID. So I'm just gonna say L student ID. So it's just it's of the type integer. So this comes from this member variable here, student ID. So okay, so the constructor is not yet implemented, so let's just implement that. And how we implement this, derived class implementation. So we'll say we'll say student, right, colon, student, right, and it'll take in string, fname, similarly, string, lname, and then it'll take in integer, which is L student ID, and then we'll have colon person, where it takes in fname. We don't have to write the types, and then lname, and then just like that, you can now start writing whatever it is that you want to write. So okay, let me just finish it up and I'll explain. So the only thing that we're gonna initialize in here is the student ID. So I'll say student ID is equals to L student ID. All right, so basically what happened here is that just like how you would a normal constructor, because if you look at the student ID constructor, student ID is fname, lname, and student ID, right? Those are the parameters that it takes. And similarly, there's no difference, fname, lname, student ID. And then the only difference now is that you need to make it a way that, oh, listen, this is a derived class and we've derived it from person, and you pass in the variables that come with person, right? You don't need to actually write down the types because we already have the types over here. So that's all you do. Okay, now we basically now can actually move on and actually call this constructor, or initialize our variable, initialize our object. So I can say student, and I can say student1, for instance, and I can just say this guy is Mac, his surname is Sinatra, whatever the name is, it's fine. So now notice how you'll get squiggly lines over here, or if you run this will not work. The reason for that is it'll say no instance of constructor student matches the argument list. Now it doesn't match the argument list because this constructor, we have forgotten to add the student ID. We forgot to include student ID in the instantiation of our object. So I'm going to add student ID. Say the student ID is maybe 11122. That's maybe the student number of the student, right? So yeah, basically that's it. That's how you've basically declared your object. So I'm just going to call student1.displayInfo, and the reason for that is that we want to see what student1 entails, or what's underneath it. So let's run that, and as you can see, it'll say first name Mac and last name Sinatra. So you might be wondering, okay, but how does this work? How are we able to get the first name and the last name of student1, whereas if you check in the derived class, we don't actually have a display info? It's only in person, and the reason for that is this is inheritance in a nutshell. Everything that is in person gets inherited by its derived class student. So a lot of the things you don't need to declare again, just like the first name and the last name, right? This is still, the student is still a person, so all that information gets inherited back into the student. You only you can change things if you want to, but if you don't want to, it will just inherit everything that comes with person. Okay, so in this case we just added one more member variable, which is student ID. And similarly you can do the same with any other derived class that you want to create. You can just make it derive any other. So even for student, we can create another class that derives student. You know what I mean? So now, just what do we want to do now? Because I outputted display info. The display info works exactly the same. So, but here's the problem. If you look at display info, you have first name and last name, but for the student, we're not getting the actual student ID. So we want to get the student ID. So how can we change this? Okay, so we can change this, or we can add to the, sorry about that. Yes, as I was saying, now what we want to do is actually write the output so that we can get student ID inside the output of the student. Okay, so let's do that. Now this operation of overriding certain things, because now we're just calling student1, and this basically goes into the base class and calls display info. But now we want to derive, we want to override display info. So in that case, where we want to actually change things, we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it inside our own class, or our new derived class. Now it's display info. Now you can notice that the compiler will want us to actually also write the implementation for this function now, because it's a new function. Now what I can do is go down here and actually start calling that. I'm just going to copy the old one. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it over here and say display info, and what I can do here is basically I can just say, okay, it's first name, last name, and then I can just say, okay, just also give me and student ID is, and then you can just say student ID, right? Wrong. Sorry, let me just change this, will be student. That's wrong. This will not work. The reason for that is because first name and last name are private. These are scoped privately in the base class. So even if our derived class does inherit everything that comes with the base class, even though the first name and the last name are inherited, they're still private and you can't access that information. And that's the whole thing about encapsulation and not allowing information to be passed down, even if it's passed to a derived class. So really what you can do here, since we want to be able to display this information, you can change this to protected, and that's where protected access modifiers come in. Like I said in the past, so I said that you can have public access modifier, private modifier, and then you can also have a protected modifier. Basically in protected, the only difference in protected is that whatever is in protected can be accessed by your derived class. So obviously in private, no one or nothing, no other class can access that information except for your own class. So in protected, if I were to remove this private and replace it with protected, right, you'll notice that if I scroll down all the way, I can actually now start being able to access this information. And if I run it, and remember that we're actually calling display info on student 1, if I run this, you'll notice that we're now able to actually get that information. First name, Mac, last name, Sinatra, student ID is this. So that actually works, but that's not the recommended way of doing things. The recommended way of doing things is keeping everything private unless you absolutely need to. So what I would do here is I'll return this to private, right? And both methods are okay, you can use either method, but this is the recommended method. Keep this private, and then what you can do is that you're going to have to write functions, right, for first name and last name. So just write functions that allow you to get this information. For instance, you can go ahead and say string, these are our getters, so string get first name, and then string get last name, like that. I'm just gonna change this to lowercase. So simplified, I'm gonna declare write the implementation here. I'll say person : get first name, and I'll just say return first name. And similarly, I'll say, you know what, person get last name, okay, and we return the last name. Now what I missed is that we need to write the output data type, which is string. It returns a string. So these both return a string, and these are your getters. So since we have these written down, and remember these functions are public underneath the public access modifier, we can just call them anyway in our program. So I can just say, hey, person : get first name, and then my braces. Similarly here I can say person : get last name, and just like that we have our application. So remember, this display info is already being called in the main function display info here. If I run this, notice that we get first name Daniel, last name Jubman, and then first name Mac, last name Sinatra, with the student ID. So it now works just from calling these functions, okay, instead of making things protected. But whichever method you can use, you can change this to protected if you want to. It'll still work. It'll even still work in this example, but obviously why would you want to do that? Just keep it private and then just call the functions. That's why we have getters. Sorry, we have yes, these are getters, or you can call them accessors. Right, so that's basically it. This has been inheritance, guys. This is inheritance. You can create as many derived classes as you want. We obviously didn't go through the example of the lecturer. If you want to, you can actually write that derived class, and that should be your homework assessment. Basically, just go ahead and write the derived class for the lecturer here. Have it have different member variables such as the department, maybe make it a string, and yeah, and just call different functions, maybe add more functions for the student, and that's basically it, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.